All right. So listen, I have two sons of cops here.
Yeah,
today.
it's true.
That's a weird coincidence.
Did you smoke as much weed as I did in high school?
No, I don't think.
I'm going to keep that off the record.
That's me over here. I'm the one who smokes as much as you do, not him. So, look, journalists, you guys get a lot of shit. I got to say, sometimes, boy, they do some really great stuff. They went undercover, sort of, and found out that police killings in America have been undercounted because this is buried in the statistics. Up until very recently, like 2 weeks ago when the story came out, we thought police killings in America were I was going by the stats that the FBI gave us. Well, about 55% of fatal encounters between 1980 and 2018 were listed as another cause of death when it was really the cops. The main reason? The medical examiners were covering up for them. You know, they work in the same office. It's like when your buddy breaks the copier and you got to, you know, oh. And so we thought 17,000 people were killed. It was actually 31,000, and of course, a stark racial gap. 3.5 times as likely to be killed as a black American as a white by the cops. So, I mean, there's lots of that story, but I wanted a reaction of two guys whose dads were cops.
Well, you need to bring more of this data out into the light. It's appalling that the Washington Post 6 years ago had to be the one to build this whole database on police killings in this country. And so often when you look at the data, too, we don't even know the names of police officers who are involved with the deaths of young black men across this country. And as a reporter, bring it all out. Pull it into the sunlight. Because you can't hide from the truth here. And the truth, there's always more truth when it comes to police killings. It's evasive, the culture around it. And you just got to keep digging.
I want to acknowledge it's not easy being a police officer. I don't think anyone wants to get up and see the things that I have two cousins that are currently police officers. And with that said, I don't want what happened in Brunswick, Georgia to happen. An ex-cop can hunt a black man down or any person with their kid, and because they're friends with the prosecutor, just get a get-out-of-jail-free card until people come in. I think that in terms of being punitive, I've often heard politicians talk about coming down on crime. Police officers that are guilty of these crimes should serve no less than life in jail in terms of murdering someone. Police officers that do this should have their pensions cut off and paid to the families of those murdered, and the taxpayers don't need to keep paying these suits off. And last but not least, we need to make police officer training longer than 6 to 8 months. It needs to be like a junior college, at least a couple years, and you need to either be reflective of or come from the communities you're policing. Because if not, what you're setting up is a hunter and prey situation, and I think that's what's driven American policing.
You know, when I was growing up, my dad was a cop in Washington, D.C., in the northeast section of D.C. My dad, I always will remember this, my dad said the greatest thing he ever did as a police officer is never had to fire his weapon. That there was, that he takes pride in that he never had to fire his weapon. And you just see across all these cities and communities, it's the escalation constantly that leads to this, and this just fervor around tense events.
A paraplegic young man was just drug out of a car. A paraplegic who's telling the cop, my legs don't work, is drug out of a car. We've seen women and mothers. It's time to reform policing in a way that's punitive to bad cops and in a way that encourages education to
Congress walked away from it, though, in September.
Yeah, they did.
But reform, key word, as opposed to defund. I think if you said the word defund, I think a lot of Americans would think, oh, that's the position, defund the police, of most Democratic politicians. It's not. It's the position of a lot of Democrats on Twitter. There's a senator from Alabama, Tommy Tuberville, I think he was a football coach. He's a moron. He is. He's just a moron. I mean, he wanted to put Senate Democrats on the record to being against or for defunding the police. And it was 99-0 against it. So the Democratic politicians are not for defunding the police. It's the Twitter mob that is. And this is the problem. The Democratic politicians wear that on them because people don't make that differentiation. And you're not for defunding the police. You said reforming the police.
I want to reform the police, but I also would like to move where money goes. In Atlanta, we had a wonderful police athletic league. It was putting great kids out that were sports, that were into boxing, that were into things like reading after school, and that funding got shrunk. And I was working with them for a while because I wanted to see more young men learning how to use their hands and less young men learning how to use guns on the streets. I'd rather you be at a firearms taught by a real instructor. So I'd like to see the funding that currently goes into militarizing police with tanks and dogs and, Israeli soldier type training. I'd like to see that go into a different form in our policing. So I'm not saying, because I don't ever think America's going to defund police, but that does not mean we can't say what our tax dollars should go to do.